Hola. Okay, so this question is for those of you that might be in the Spanish 1 classroom or in a beginning class and you're trying to avoid using English in order to practice as much as you can. This is a really good question for you to master at the very beginning. Okay, so you might hear your teacher saying this or asking you this, or you can use it to ask your teacher for a clarification or a meaning. So, ¿qué significa? The question is, ¿qué significa? Okay? And what this means is you're basically asking, what does so and so mean? Or what is the meaning of so and so? What is the significance? So, to see it in context, ¿qué significa buenos días? Let's say your teacher walks in and he or she asks or says, Buenos días, clase. And you're like, what does buenos dias mean? Or what does that mean? So in order for you to stick to Spanish, you can ask, ¿qué significa buenos días? Okay? And she would reply, buenos días significa good morning. Okay? Buenos días significa good morning. ¿Qué significa buenas tardes? ¿Qué significa buenas tardes? Buenas tardes significa good afternoon. Okay. ¿Qué significa buenas noches? ¿Qué significa buenas noches? Buenas noches significa good evening and good night. Okay, so we use buenas noches for both good evening and good night. Okay, so once again, ¿qué significa buenos días? ¿Qué significa buenas tardes? ¿Y qué significa buenas noches? Okay, so for those of you that might want a more detailed explanation or a grammar explanation of what's going on here. Okay, so this is just, it's not a very detailed one yet because we don't want to get too tied up in the grammar rules. But just to give you an idea, okay, so when we say buenos días, for example, okay, so you have the expression buenos días, which we know now means good morning. Okay, so buenos, here you're basically saying good days, okay? So buenos días. Días. You have an accent over your I here, so we don't want to say días. We want to say días. Buenos días. Now, why do we have buenos días and why do we have then buenas noches? We notice that here in the first adjective we have os. The second one right here, buenas, it's the same adjective. Okay, so good and good. But here it ends with os, here it ends with as. Okay, so what determines the ending of an adjective is going to be what we call in Spanish the gender of the noun. Okay, so in Spanish we have genders, and a lot of you have probably already heard about that. It's the very basic concept of the Spanish language. But if you haven't, our nouns in Spanish have what we call gender, and the gender either feminine or masculine. So if it ends with os, if an adjective ends with os, that's because the noun that it's describing is considered masculine plural in this case, okay? If it ends with as, like it does here, it's because your noun, in this case noches, is a feminine and plural noun. Therefore, my adjective has to match in gender and in quantity. That's why we do not say buenas días, nor do we say buenos noches, okay? Now those mistakes, they're minor mistakes, and if you are having a conversation with a native speaker and you say buenos noches, that's okay. I mean, they'll still understand what you're trying to say. It's better to try it and just take that leap and say it instead of just not saying it at all. And then with time, those are things that you will fix and work on. Okay. Up here we have a question word. We have que. Okay, so we know that que in this context significa, significa, you're going to see me do that a lot till I get my right vowel there. Okay, so que we know means what in this context. It's one of our question words. Okay, so que, anytime it's being used as a question word, it's going to have an accent over your E there. Okay, sometimes it's not being used as a question word, which we'll get into later. But notice it will have an accent over the E. Okay, and that is all the grammar we're going to get into in this video. That's it. Adios.